All right, so welcome back here to the Pursuing Freedom podcast, and I'm so excited to have you here today to meet Haley LoBosco. And Haley is a friend of mine that I've known throughout the years in the real estate industry. She's based in the Arizona area, and she has a background, ironically, in the operations side of real estate. And what I love about the conversations I've had with her are the fact that she understands how to look at running your real estate business like a business, but not the way that we're typically told. So she has a very personalized approach to living life authentically and allowing that authenticity and energy to infuse everything she does professionally in such a way that she creates a vibrancy and a magnetism that allows her to attract abundance, not only for herself, but for everyone she ever gets to connect with. So I have no doubt that the conversation we're about to have is going to hit you straight in your heart and soul and make you smile and make you think to yourself, I hadn't really thought of it that way. And I am confident you're going to leave this conversation inspired and fired up, and more importantly, ready to give yourself permission to be exactly who you are, more authentic, more on purpose, more alive, more engaged, more connected, and more magnetic. So with no further ado, Haley, if you could just share a brief intro from your words about your background in the real estate industry and kind of how you got into the space you're in now as a leader, a coach, and a mentor in real estate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erin. That was such a beautiful introduction. So my background is really, it started as a teacher. Actually, I came from a special education background. I loved working with children. And the children that I was working with, they had a lot of behavioral issues. So they couldn't be placed in the public school system because they were labeled as violent and aggressive and abusive. And really what was going on is they had a really shitty upbringing, right? They were abandoned or neglected, and they really wanted what we all want as human beings, which is to know that they're enough and to know that they are loved. And they needed that consistency. They needed someone there who could lead them, not manage them. And so from there, I became a social worker. And then my husband and I got married. This was back in 2011. We moved from Arizona to Chicago so I could support him in grad school. And we had a daughter, and I became a stay-at-home mom. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years. And I loved being a mom and being home with my daughter and raising her and really molding her into being the best version of herself. However, there was also a lot of societal norms and pressures. And remember what we talked about earlier, those geometric shapes that were put in, especially as women. And I felt very isolated. I felt very alone. And I felt like I was very unworthy and I had no value because I was believing a lot of the stories that our Western culture teaches us, that in order to be enough, we have to do and be something extraordinary. And I didn't realize how lonely I had become and how much I had actually bought into that story until one day my husband said, "Hey, have you thought about getting your real estate license?" He said, this is hilarious. He was like, "I know you really like going on Zillow, and I know you like watching HGTV. It's going to be just like that. You're going to have so much fun." And I thought, well, I haven't had a conversation with an adult in 7 years. I talk to our daughter every day and play Barbies. I don't know how well I can actually do it going back to school. And he said, "Well, first of all, Haley, you're one of the smartest people that I know, and I fully support you, and you can do this." And so I did. I went back to school. I got my real estate license. I became a real estate agent. And very early on in my real estate career, I wanted more. Like, I was excited to get back into doing something, being something other than just the stay-at-home mom. And so I got really, really passionate. I was so driven. I was so eager. I very quickly became a leader on the team, was the director of lead generation, from that to being an executive assistant, to then being chief of staff of a team of about 100 agents. And we were one of the fastest producing teams in Arizona. And I still was really hungry. I was so hungry. I was so eager. And I was just like, give me more, give me more. And that eagerness and that drive and that pursuit of wanting more led to a conversation of being told, Haley, we think that you're actually too entrepreneurial. We really are looking for somebody who's going to come in and do like the 9 to 5 and stay quiet in the background and not really have a voice. And I thought, well, why am I being told this? That's not fair, right? Like I want to have a voice. I want to be, I don't want to be behind somebody. I want to be beside them. And so we had to part ways because I wanted more than what I was being offered. And so from there, I decided to partner with somebody else in real estate. I joined somebody else and started doing operations work, which then quickly led into mentoring and coaching. And now I'm doing full-time coaching and teaching and training and helping other women entrepreneurs feel empowered to be aligned with what really serves them and not listen to that nagging voice that tells us this is what society says you should be.
So we talked about this a little bit before we were recording, but you were talking about the word story. And I also thought it was really interesting how you said something about being lonely, because one of the things I'm really passionate about with pursuing freedom and creating community is helping us sort of unearth that loneliness, because I think so many of us are walking around with stories in our head, and these stories about what we should be doing, what we're supposed to do, what we could do, what we have to do, and we kind of lose sight of what we would like to do or what we feel called to do. And when we have these stories that are holding us back, right, and typically they've been programmed into us at a younger age, at a younger version of ourselves that didn't know what we were capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, even though we're all human and we all experience this, we do feel like we're the only one often. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I feeling so crazy? Like, I have some hopes and dreams, or I have this crazy idea, or and then I have the story on why I can't, or why I shouldn't, or why I'm not the right person for that, or why it looks easy for that person, right? And so this concept of stories, and then also the idea of loneliness, like, I think sometimes people think that to be lonely just means to not have companionship. And I think it's more than that. I think that there's a loneliness within our thoughts that makes us feel like we're alone, even though we might be physically surrounded by human beings.
Yes.
So where was it the turning point for you as you started to explore this and do what I refer to as the unbecoming? Like, we spend our lives trying to become what we're supposed to be, or we get our real estate license or our mortgage license, or we become an entrepreneur and we go take the trainings and we follow the instructions and we go try to become this vision, this version, this, like you said, put us into into the triangle shape or the square or the circle. And it's like, at what point do you say, no, I want to unbecome and I want to rewrite the story?
Yeah. So first of all, we have to normalize how painful it is to unbecome. We have to normalize that and accept and embrace that most of us, we are living our lives and basing most of the decisions that we're making on beliefs and conditions that are actually not ours. And that is where burnout comes from. That is where unalignment comes from. That nagging feeling inside of your gut where you're like, I'm doing this and I'm really successful at it, but damn, this doesn't feel right. It's all of that. It's because you're actually not aligned. We carry around beliefs and conditioned behaviors from our childhood and even into our young adulthood that come from our parents, our friends, people at church, our teachers, people who we love, who love us and support us. But these are beliefs that come from them. And in order for us to feel like we fit into this tribe, we model those behaviors and we model those beliefs, because if you think about our human conditioning, one thing that we always want to feel is included. We always want to feel included. We generally want to be liked. And if we are not included and we're not liked and we're completely, and then we don't have friends and we're like, oh my God, we don't have a tribe. And then we just go down like a whole spiral. But we have to be able to start reflecting and asking ourselves, what current beliefs do I have that I've been carrying around with me that no longer serve me? We have to ask ourselves that. In fierce conversations, I'm a fierce consultant and facilitator. Susan Scott always says we have to integrate our leaders' reality. Well, I think we have to take it a little bit deeper than that. We actually have to integrate our own reality. If we want to, like Erin said, unbecome, we have to break those conditioned behaviors, the conditioned responses that we have. If we want to step into our greatness and start leading from authenticity, we have to have the courage to do that. You're never going to have the confidence to do it until you actually start doing it and gaining the competency to do it. But it takes courage to know that it's going to be painful, but you have to ask yourself, what traumas am I carrying with me that no longer serve me? They probably did when you were younger, but now you're going to take the wheel and you're not going to carry that around anymore.
So it's funny you say that. Someone either sent it to me or tagged me, I forget, but there was an Instagram post yesterday that Mel Robbins shared around this idea of you don't need to feel confident to start. You need to start and the confidence will follow, because on the heels of the risks that you take and the wins that you have, that you start to build the confidence. And so many of us are waiting to, I always refer to it as, you're waiting to be camera ready. Nobody is camera ready. And there's not a single human being that you admire who's building a life that you desire to have that isn't still experiencing fear and insecurity and self-doubt on a daily basis. It's just a matter of building that muscle around recognizing it for what it is and deciding to no longer let it control your actions and your decisions. And you talked about stepping into greatness. And I think this is something I would really like to unpack, and maybe how we can do it is weaving in a little bit of from the inside out and the outside in is how I refer to it. So within the coaching program, we talk about this inside out approach to success in life and business, because you were talking before we started recording about having a coach who told you that you have to fit into the mold. You've got
you have to pick the one thing.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is this is where it's so fascinating that people will take the leap to go 100% commission. And as I said earlier, you'll start to attend the trainings or you'll read the books and you'll be given the playbook. And so you're told what to do. And so you're supposed to go and fit into that mold, follow the plan, and you will succeed. And so we are seeking this external success and we're feeling this misalignment internally. And my feeling is that before we worry about what to do, we've got to do this process of unbecoming. We've got to be willing to step into your greatness in spite of the fear of failure and in spite of the fear of success. And so how do you integrate all of this into allowing yourself to be limitless? Like you said, step into your greatness, which I love that. And it's just, what does it mean to say, like, I give myself permission to be the most that I can possibly be? My suspicion is that anybody who's here attending this coaching call or listening in on the podcast recording, deep down inside that you're meant for more. And you wouldn't be here if you didn't. You wouldn't still be listening if you didn't know that there's something within you that is called to greatness. And so how do we interweave that where it's like, we've got this old school way of doing things, which is here's the playbook, follow it, you'll be successful. And people do it and they make money and something's still not quite right.
So I think that this actually, Erin, it comes down to the identity that we give ourselves. We have an identity and we attach ourselves to it. And sometimes the identity that we give ourselves is actually not the identity that we're supposed to have. It's the conditioned belief and the story that we're telling ourselves. We will be successful if success looks like this, right? We create a blueprint for ourselves. And especially in Western society where we are told, and I mentioned this earlier, that we're told that in order to be enough, we have to do something or build something that is quote unquote successful and extraordinary, or something that's really, really special. And in our society, we actually define what extraordinary is in some very interesting ways. And so as women, we tend to push ourselves and we push ourselves and we push ourselves to break all of these thresholds, all of these barriers, and we're very successful at it and we can do it all. And at the end of the day, if we're still not feeling fulfilled, we have to be able to reflect on the blueprint of what we have defined for ourselves as what success really is to us. And again, we're in tech.
I was just going to ask you, have you ever defined success? Because I got interrupted one time on a podcast when I said the word success, and whoever it was said, "You mean money," right? Because that's the stereotypical definition of success. And it's not to say I welcome abundance, right? I think financial freedom is a huge piece of feeling free. And I also think it's interesting because we need to redefine success for ourselves as individuals, where we are in our journey, where we are in our lives, what we've experienced, and ask ourselves, what does it mean to feel successful to me? And to
100%.
me, and I'm curious how you define it, but I redefined success for myself years ago as success means having unlimited present moments with the people I care about personally and professionally. Because prior to redefining success, I was making a lot of money and I was miserable. I looked successful out on the outside to anybody who was observing because the money was good and the things and the experiences. But inside, I did not feel successful at all. I was practically crying myself to sleep at night, feeling like I was never present with my children, never present with my friends, and usually feeling like a hot mess express, dropping the ball at work because I was juggling too many things. So how do you define success? I'm curious, Haley.
Well, success to me, and you talked about a little bit earlier, you had mentioned like why so many of us are given a blueprint of how to be successful at something, and yet we don't actually, or like a guideline or a roadmap, especially in real estate. We're given all the tools and the resources and the training, and yet some of us don't follow through with actually doing all of that. Why is that? It's because our motivation is different. Every single person's motivation is different. And that is where we can define what success looks like. Because for me, Erin, success is not financial success. It's not finance for me. For me, it is the connections and the relationships and the impact that I can have through the gifts that I bring to each conversation. If I can help one person break through their limiting beliefs to step a little bit further into becoming or recovering who they're meant to be, that is the most rewarding and fulfilling thing to me. That's success. That is success. That might not come with $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in a bank account. But for me, knowing that I have also molded and sculpted my children's future so that they can have fierce conversations, so that they can love themselves unconditionally and know that they are enough before they even walk through the threshold. If my children feel that way every day, how is that not success? What about a teacher who is pouring her heart and her soul into her students so that they feel empowered every day? How is that not success? Right? Or a stay-at-home mom who is doing the same thing, who is shaping their children's soul and spirit. How is that not success? So again, it's what each of us are going to define this differently, and we have to be okay and give ourselves permission that what my success looks like is going to be different from you. And that is perfectly fine. That's what makes us all unique and special.
I love that. You just said so many things. First of all, when you said recovering who they were meant to be was so powerful. And then, talking about how success as you define it is going to be unique to you and that you're already enough is huge, because our world, our society, social media, thank you, industry, et cetera, is just wrought with comparisonitis. And looking at how
that's the most amazing word I've heard this week. Love that.
But truly, I mean, even when I say to people, be careful who you admire, because what it looks like on the outside, it has no bearing on how it's going on the inside. And if you don't feel joyful, if you don't feel alive and like connected and engaged and present, then it's irrelevant. The money can be great and the rest of your life could be in shambles. So we compare ourselves to what that guy's doing or that girl's doing or the person at the office or the person on Instagram, and we try to go fit into the mold and we don't understand why it feels wrong. And so I'm telling you that anyone who wants to attract financial abundance must first be willing to be you and build the business of you, and have faith that when you follow the light that is true for you and the definition of success as it is for you, you will never not have enough financially. You will always have abundance. You will always have joy and energy and impact, and everything comes to that. It follows that. And that sounds maybe too woo-woo for somebody who wants me to say, here's the playbook, here's the business strategy. I'm going to give you the play-by-play and you're going to go follow my plan and you're going to be successful. You could do that and you'll get deals and you'll make money. But if it doesn't feel good, what's the point? We have one short life to live here.
Yeah. I'll share this story with you, Erin. I've actually never really talk about this often, but in my personal life, why I use the word recover is because I grew up with an older sibling. He was 8 years older than me, who was a drug addict. And my entire upbringing, I was witnessing him destroy himself every day with drinking, with very hard drugs. And he taught me a lot. We're not close. I'm not involved so much in his life, but I admire his strength and his courage and I feel like he taught me so much because he didn't have to discover who he was meant to be. He had to recover who he already was, who he was born to be. And he struggled with that, accepting and embracing and being authentic, because it didn't align with the blueprint that he had for himself. And when we get to a point where our life conditions are not meeting our blueprint, for many of us, that might cause some anxiety, or it might even cause us to become more motivated because we want to get our life conditions to meet our blueprint. But when we get to a place where our blueprint and our life condition doesn't meet our blueprint, and we also feel helpless, that is when we start to feel pain and suffering. And it overtook his whole life and corrupted it because he only wanted to be a certain way, and he was not meant to be that way, and he could not accept it. And it has taken him over 20 years to get sober, and thank God he is. But it's a daily struggle for him to recover, like I said, who he was meant to be.
I love this. Well, I know, Haley, that you and I could go on for hours, days.
Yes, I know. When are we meeting up?
If you could just share how folks can find you, follow you, and get more of your goodness, I would appreciate that, because I'm sure that you're sharing wisdom in many places, and it would be great for people to be able to find you.
Yes. So Haley LoBosco, you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And there's also a link to my website in there as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I so appreciate your time, your energy, your wisdom, and yeah, can't wait to have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you.
And for all my listeners out there, Pursuing Freedom friends, as always, if you're enjoying this content, please be sure to leave the review wherever you're consuming it so we can continue to attract amazing guests and help this content get found, inspire more people to build that life you don't need a vacation from. I love you. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.